And that, I think, is so appropriate for what EF is trying to do in our learning system, because it's not enough to just learn.
Yes.
You have to do things.
So you incorporate a bit of a Confucian values into EF English first.
Without knowing it, we did.
Without
yes.
knowing. Yeah. Well, why not? I mean, it shows that what human intelligence and wisdom perhaps is something global, right?
I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand.
You've been teaching Chinese students English. What about your own Chinese?
Well, because I work for English First, and our mission is to teach everyone English, I shouldn't be speaking
Best
Chinese.
Excuse.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I think I do win that race in terms of excuses. But in my spare time, I study a little bit now and then, and I do think it's important for everyone living in China to try and learn Chinese. My excuse is always that I'm too busy. 我没有时间 is a saying I often use. But I do think over the long run, I need to learn it. I think it's the fastest growing language in the world.
Yes.
And I guarantee you that there are thousands of smart Harvard and Princeton and Brown graduates who are learning Chinese today, ready to take over from me in a couple of years.
Yeah. But you've got the advantage of standing in the classroom, nobody would dare talking about you behind your back, because they would not believe that you don't speak much Chinese. The more you say, 我不懂,我不明白, the more they become suspicious.
They think I'm humble.
Oh, yes.
Well, I can tell them now. It is true. I don't understand.
If you speak Chinese, you'll always be tempted into explaining to your students in Chinese.
Exactly.
Right? And that's not a very recommendable way of teaching.
It's much easier, but you will not learn.
Yeah, because I remember when I started studying French, it was a total shock for everyone in the first class. The French teacher refused to say a single word in English, let alone Chinese.
Immersion.
So it was all immersion course. It was all in French. And we end up half confused and half put off, right?
Well, you should have gone to an EF school.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, I think it's a good way of teaching English. 学中文啊，就要交中国女朋友.
Which is, I need to get out and use it.
I mean, you've got to have a photographic memory, they all say. What's the most difficult part you've encountered so far in learning Chinese? The characters? I mean, you've got to have a photographic memory, they all say. Yes?
I haven't even begun learning characters, but I think
remembering the syllables.
Memorization is the hardest by far, because in all other languages I've learned, you can relate some Latin or Germanic word to that target
Just
word.
Like between Swedish and English.
Exactly, or Spanish or German, and that's a memorization trick, and you don't have it here, like Chinese students don't have from Chinese to English. So it is the same problem with memorization that our own students have. But I find myself writing the words down several times and trying to memorize. Yes. But again, rote learning doesn't work. So my challenge is exactly the same challenge that our students have, which is I need to get out and use it. I need to try and embarrass myself in front of you and in front of my friends.
Right.
And that takes a big leap of faith for all of us.
因为很多老外他学中文呢，就要交中国女朋友，在这方面可能在菲比兰这个中文还不怎么样，证明他在上海这么久还是个乖孩子啊。这样对于华语很多女观众可能是一个好消息，也说不定。
I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand.
In order to do well, they have to speak English, write English well.
It's true of almost any language. There's
not just remembering the vocabulary and the grammatical rules.
The biggest handicap is the lack of qualified teachers.
Now, China is a big market. With a population 1.3 billion people, it looks and sounds very encouraging. I mean, it is. I mean,
absolutely.
Yes. Right. Parents have the children, and they want the children to do well because of the Confucian value. In order to do well, they have to speak English and write English well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you put your finger on a huge part of the market because Chinese parents, unlike most of the world, only have one child in most cases. And that child is only 6 or 7 or 8 years old once. And so they can't miss that year of education. They can't miss that year of opportunity. And that fact has helped our Chinese kids' English business enormously. And even as an adult, it's also true that there's tremendous competition for work.
Yeah.
More university graduates than jobs, and so that leads to a need for qualifications and for skills, one of them being English.
What do you think about the status of English in China?
Well, I think that China is the emerging economic superpower, and but it is in the very beginning. Chinese companies are not internationalized yet. They're not that large compared to most foreign companies. And so as Chinese companies begin to acquire foreign companies and expand internationally, the need for domestic companies to actually acquire English skills will grow enormously. But also foreign company investment in China and the export business. And so a lot of the demand in our industry is driven by the fact that foreign companies pay a premium to white-collar workers when they speak English. But I think that's changing to where domestic companies will have the same need in their internationalization efforts.
Every time I travel to China, I'm convinced that there's a long way for China to catch up and a big market for you. As I spot all the